The rain tapped gently against the kitchen window of Carol Mitchell's suburban home in Rochester, New York. The same home where she had raised her daughter Jennifer, hosted countless Thanksgiving dinners, and weathered the storm after Robert's passing 3 years ago. At 63, Carol sat at her familiar oak dining table, fingers wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. "Mom, I just don't understand why you'd want to uproot your entire life at your age," Jennifer said, her voice carrying that particular tone, the one Carol had started hearing more frequently since her 60th birthday. A mixture of concern and condescension that made Carol's shoulders tense. Jennifer, now 35 with 2 children of her own, placed her hand over her mother's. "The Florida real estate market is volatile. The hurricanes alone should be enough to reconsider. And what about healthcare? Your doctors are all here. Your friends are here. I'm here." Carol studied her daughter's face, the crease between her brows that reminded her so much of Robert. Jennifer had always been practical, even as a child. The one who organized her toys by color, who started saving for college at 16. Carol had always admired that about her until recently, when that practicality had begun to feel like a cage. "I've lived in Rochester my entire life, Jen," Carol said, her voice steady despite the flutter of anxiety in her chest. 40 years in this house. I've shoveled enough snow to build an igloo the size of Manhattan. I think I've earned a little sunshine." Jennifer sighed, reaching for her phone to pull up an article. "Look at these statistics about retirees who move to Florida and end up regretting it. The humidity, the cost of living." "I'm not looking for your permission," Carol interrupted, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I'm selling the house. I've already put a deposit on a condo in St. Petersburg." The silence that followed felt heavier than all the snow Carol had ever shoveled. Jennifer's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Mom, this isn't like you. Dad always handled the big decisions, the finances. I'm just worried you're making an impulsive choice, because you're—" Jennifer hesitated. "Because I'm what?" Carol asked, though she already knew what was coming. "Because you're struggling with being alone, with aging. It's normal to want to change, but buying a beachfront property at 63, that's not acting your age, Mom. That's running away." The words stung more than Carol expected, not because Jennifer was being cruel, she wasn't, but because a small part of Carol feared she might be right. Was this just a desperate grasp at youth? A denial of reality? Carol stood up and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, Mrs. Abernathy was walking her corgi, hunched against the October chill, the same route she'd taken every day for the past 20 years. Predictable, safe, expected. "Your father and I saved our entire lives," Carol said, watching her neighbor's slow progress down the sidewalk. "We delayed trips, worked overtime, put money away for your college, for retirement. We did everything right by the book." She turned to face her daughter. "And then he died at 66, having never seen the Grand Canyon, never having felt sand between his toes that wasn't at Lake Ontario." Jennifer's expression softened. "Mom? No, listen to me. I've thought this through. I've done the research, talked to financial advisors. This isn't impulsive. I've been planning this for a year." "A year? And you're only telling me now?" Carol returned to the table, meeting her daughter's hurt gaze. "Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. I knew you'd try to talk me out of it." Jennifer was silent for a moment, then asked in a quieter voice, "What about holidays? The kids' birthdays you'll miss so much." "There are flights every day between Rochester and Tampa," Carol replied. "And you know what? You all could visit me. Christmas on the beach might be a nice change from scraping ice off your windshield." The corner of Jennifer's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but she quickly suppressed it. "I just want you to be realistic, Mom. You're not 30 anymore, moving to a new state, starting over. It's harder than you think." Carol felt something shift inside her then, a resolve hardening like concrete. "You're right," she said, straightening her shoulders. "I'm not 30. I'm 63. And if that's the case, then I should absolutely act my age." Jennifer looked momentarily relieved until Carol continued. "Acting my age means recognizing that I don't have endless time left. It means making choices based on what I want, not what other people expect of me. It means not waiting anymore." Carol's voice grew stronger with each word. "So yes, Jennifer, I am going to act my age. I'm going to embrace every one of my 63 years and use the wisdom I've earned to live exactly as I choose." The rain outside had stopped, and a weak sunbeam cut through the clouds, casting a rectangle of light across the dining table. Jennifer stared at her mother, seeing something new in her face, or perhaps something very old that had been there all along, hidden beneath years of compromise and responsibility. "When do you leave?" Jennifer finally asked, her voice small but no longer argumentative. "I close on the condo next month. The realtor here thinks the house will sell quickly." Carol reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "This isn't goodbye, Jen. It's just a new chapter." Jennifer nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "Dad would have worried himself sick over this," she said with a slight watery smile. Carol laughed, a genuine laugh that felt like releasing a breath she'd been holding for 3 years. Yes, he absolutely would have. And then he would have made spreadsheets and contingency plans and eventually come around, just like you will. Later that evening, after Jennifer had left with promises to help pack and reluctant acceptance of her mother's decision, Carol stood in her bedroom doorway, surveying the space she had shared with Robert for nearly 4 decades. Their wedding photo still sat on his nightstand, his reading glasses folded neatly beside it, a habit she couldn't bring herself to break even after all this time. She crossed to the window and pulled back the curtains. The moon was visible now, casting silver light over the familiar neighborhood. Tomorrow she would begin sorting through 40 years of accumulated memories, deciding what to keep and what to leave behind. It wouldn't be easy, but as she looked up at the night sky, Carol felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: anticipation. In just a few weeks, she would be watching this same moon from a different window, listening to waves instead of passing cars, beginning something new when everyone expected her to quietly fade into the predictable patterns of aging. "I'm acting my age, Robert," she whispered to the empty room, "just not the way they think I should." Carol stood in what was once her living room, now a hollow space echoing with footsteps and memories. The movers had taken the last of her furniture that morning, the pieces she'd decided to bring with her to Florida. The rest had been sold, donated, or claimed by Jennifer and a few close friends. "It's smaller than I remembered," she murmured to herself, her voice bouncing off bare walls where family photos had once hung. 40 years of life contained within these walls, and now it was stripped down to nothing but beige paint and faint rectangles marking where pictures had protected the color from fading. She walked to the bay window, Robert's favorite spot, and ran her hand along the sill. Outside, the November sky hung heavy with clouds, threatening the season's first snow. Mrs. Abernathy was retrieving her mail, bundled in a thick down coat. She waved when she spotted Carol, then gestured dramatically at the sky and shook her head. Carol smiled and waved back. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from Jennifer. "Everything packed up? Need help with anything else before tomorrow?" Carol typed back, "All set, just saying goodbye to the house." She hesitated, then added, "I love you. Thank you for understanding." Understanding might be too strong a word. Accepting, maybe. Jennifer had come around gradually over the past month, helping Carol sort through decades of possessions while occasionally slipping in comments about Florida humidity and hurricane insurance. The sound of tires on the driveway pulled Carol's attention back to the window. A car she didn't recognize had pulled up, a sleek silver sedan with rental plates. The driver's door opened, and Carol felt her heart skip as a familiar figure emerged. "Michael?" she gasped, hurrying to the front door and pulling it open before he could knock. Her younger brother stood on the porch, his smile sheepish beneath his salt-and-pepper beard. "Surprise," he said, opening his arms. Carol stepped into his embrace, laughing through sudden tears. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Seattle." Michael pulled back, hands resting on her shoulders. "You think I'd let my big sister move across the country without saying goodbye? Jennifer told me your flight's tomorrow morning. You could have called and missed the look on your face. Not a chance." He glanced past her into the empty house. Am I too late to help with the heavy lifting? Carol wiped her eyes, shaking her head. The movers took everything this morning, but your timing is perfect. I was just having a final walkthrough and feeling a bit... She trailed off. Terrified? Michael offered. I was going to say nostalgic, but yes, that too. Carol pulled him inside, closing the door against the cold. I can't believe you flew all this way. I can't believe you're moving to Florida. Michael followed her into the kitchen, the only room with any furniture left. A card table and 2 folding chairs Carol had borrowed from Jennifer for her last night in the house. Bold move, sis. Mom and Dad would be shocked, Carol laughed. Mom would be scandalized. Dad would be jealous. True. Michael pulled out one of the chairs and sat. Speaking of jealous, I brought you something. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. Carol took it, raising an eyebrow. It's not my birthday. It's a housewarming gift, or condo warming, I guess. She unwrapped it carefully to find a small, smooth stone carved into the shape of a turtle, its shell inlaid with delicate turquoise pieces. It's beautiful, she said, turning it over in her hand. It's from this Navajo artist in Arizona. The turtle represents longevity and new beginnings. Michael's eyes crinkled. Seemed appropriate. Carol set the turtle on the card table, touched by the thoughtfulness. I'm going to put this on my new balcony, my ocean view balcony, she added with a hint of pride. About that, Michael leaned forward, his expression growing serious. Are you sure about this, Carol? It's a big change, she sighed. Not you too. I've had enough skepticism from Jennifer. I'm not being skeptical. Michael raised his hands defensively. I'm impressed. It's brave. Brave! Carol repeated, surprised. Hell yes, starting over somewhere new at any age takes courage. I should know. I've moved enough times. Michael, ever the family nomad, had lived in 6 different states since college. I'm just checking that you're doing this for the right reasons. Carol turned the turtle carving in her hands, considering her brother's question. After Robert died, I spent a year just existing, going through the motions. Then one morning, I was watching the weather forecast, another blizzard warning, and the meteorologist mentioned it was 72 degrees in St. Petersburg. She smiled at the memory. Something just clicked. I realized I was waiting for permission to want something different. Permission from who? From Robert, from Jennifer, from myself. Carol shrugged. I spent that whole day researching Florida real estate. It felt like waking up after a long sleep. Michael nodded slowly. Robert always did hate the cold. He complained about it every winter for 40 years, Carol laughed. But he never would have moved. His job, his routine, he needed the familiar. And you don't? Carol looked around the empty kitchen where she'd prepared thousands of meals, bandaged scraped knees, helped with homework, and later cried alone after Robert's funeral. I thought I did. Now I'm not so sure. They talked for hours, ordering pizza and sharing stories about the house, about Robert, about their parents. As evening settled into night, Michael helped Carol make up her air mattress in what used to be the master bedroom. You know, he said, smoothing down a corner of the borrowed sheets, I was worried you were running away from something. Grief, maybe. But I think you're actually running towards something. Carol smiled. That's exactly it. I'm not trying to escape my age or my past. I'm just finally allowing myself to want more than what's expected of me. After Michael left for his hotel, promising to drive her to the airport in the morning, Carol took one final walk through the house. In each room, she allowed herself to recall one perfect memory, Jennifer taking her first steps in the living room, teaching her to bake cookies in the kitchen, Robert building bookshelves in their bedroom while singing off-key to Springsteen. Finally, she returned to the kitchen and pulled an envelope from her purse. Inside was a letter she'd written to the new owners, a young couple expecting their first child. She placed it on the counter alongside the spare key. Be happy here, she whispered to the empty house, running her hand along the wall one last time before returning to her makeshift bed. Sleep came surprisingly easily, and she dreamed of ocean waves and salt air. The next morning dawned clear and cold, a fresh dusting of snow covering the lawn, Rochester's parting gift. Carol stood on the porch, suitcase at her feet, as Michael loaded her carry-on into his rental car. Jennifer's SUV pulled into the driveway, and she emerged with her two children, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Lucas. "We came to say goodbye," Jennifer said, her eyes red-rimmed but her smile genuine, "and to give you this." She handed Carol a flat-wrapped package. Carol opened it to find a framed photo of all of them. Jennifer, her husband Dave, the kids and Carol, taken at last year's Christmas. On the frame was engraved, "Family knows no distance." "Oh, Jen." Carol pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. "Thank you. Uncle Mike said we can come visit at Christmas," Lucas announced, bouncing on his toes. "He said there's a pool and an ocean." "And no snow," Emma added with a serious nod. Carol knelt to hug her grandchildren. "The guest room will be all ready for you, and there's a park right next to my building with the best playground you've ever seen." As they said their goodbyes, Carol felt a curious lightness. The weight of leaving was real, but it wasn't crushing her as she'd feared. Instead, it felt like setting down a heavy suitcase after carrying it too long. On the drive to the airport, Michael glanced over at her. Having second thoughts? Carol watched the familiar streets of Rochester passing by, landmarks of her life for 6 decades. The hospital where Jennifer was born, the school where she'd taught for 30 years, the church where she and Robert had married. "Not second thoughts," she said slowly. "Just appreciating what I'm leaving. It doesn't mean I shouldn't go." "That's the Carol I remember," Michael grinned. "The one who taught me to ride a bike and told me it was okay to fall as long as I got back up." At the terminal, Michael hugged her fiercely. "Call me when you land. And Carol, I'm proud of you." As she settled into her seat on the plane, Carol felt a strange mix of emotions: grief for what she was leaving behind, anxiety about the unknown ahead, but most of all, a bubbling excitement she hadn't felt in years. The plane accelerated down the runway, and Carol watched out the window as Rochester grew smaller beneath her, covered in its first winter blanket of white. Then they broke through the clouds into brilliant sunshine, and she thought, this is what acting my age really means. Not settling, not shrinking, but having the wisdom to know what I truly want and the courage to reach for it. 3 hours later, as the plane began its descent into Tampa, Carol caught her first glimpse of the Florida coastline, a ribbon of white sand meeting turquoise water, dotted with palm trees swaying in the breeze. The sunshine was radiant, reflecting off the Gulf of Mexico like scattered diamonds. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said the elderly man seated beside her, who had slept most of the flight. "Yes," Carol replied, unable to take her eyes off the view. "It really is." "First time in Florida?" he asked. Carol smiled, feeling the weight of Rochester falling away with each passing second. "No," she said. "First time home." The humidity hit Carol like a warm blanket as she stepped out of Tampa International Airport. November in Florida felt like July in Rochester, the air heavy with moisture and the scent of unfamiliar flowering plants. She inhaled deeply, tasting salt on her tongue, the ocean even miles away, announcing its presence. "Mrs. Mitchell?" A woman in crisp linen pants and a coral blouse approached, hand extended. "I'm Diane Rodriguez from Coastal Dreams Realty. We spoke on the phone." Carol shook her hand, grateful for the familiar name amid the sea of newness. "Please, call me Carol. Thank you for picking me up." "My pleasure. I couldn't let our newest St. Pete resident take a cab on her first day." Diane led Carol to a gleaming white SUV, helping with her luggage. "How was your flight?" "Smooth," Carol said, sliding into the passenger seat. "Though I'm still trying to process that I woke up in the snow, and now I'm—" She gestured at the palm trees lining the airport exit. Diane laughed, a warm, generous sound. "That's the Florida magic. The weather shock alone is worth the move." She navigated through traffic with the ease of a local. "We've got about a 30-minute drive to St. Petersburg. Your condo is all ready. The previous owners left everything spotless, and your furniture arrived yesterday. The building manager let the movers in, just as you arranged." Carol nodded, watching the unfamiliar landscape blur past the window. strip malls and palm trees, billboards advertising seafood restaurants and cataract surgery. So different from the brick buildings and maple trees of home. Not home, she corrected herself. Rochester. This was home now. As they crossed Tampa Bay on the Howard Franklin Bridge, the waters of the bay stretched out on either side, sparkling in the afternoon sun. Sailboats dotted the horizon, and in the distance, Carol could make out the skyline of St. Petersburg. There she is, Diane said, noticing Carol's gaze. St. Pete, the Sunshine City. 361 days of sunshine per year on average. What happens on those other 4 days? Carol asked. We all stay inside and complain, Diane grinned. Like you northerners with snow, except our weather trauma lasts hours instead of months. The city grew larger as they approached, a collection of modern high-rises mingled with Spanish-inspired architecture. Diane pointed out landmarks as they drove. The Salvador Dalí Museum, with its distinctive glass bubble, the historic Vinoy Hotel with its pink Mediterranean Revival facade, the sprawling waterfront parks that lined the bay. And here we are, Diane finally announced, turning onto Beach Drive. Shoreline Towers. Carol leaned forward, taking in the sleek 12-story building with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the water. A fountain played in the circular drive, and tropical landscaping surrounded the entrance. Birds of paradise and hibiscus in vibrant bloom despite the late-year date. It's even more beautiful than the pictures, Carol murmured. Inside, the lobby featured gleaming marble floors, comfortable seating areas, and a wall of windows overlooking a pool terrace, and, beyond it, the waters of Tampa Bay. A man in his 60s approached from behind a desk, smiling in welcome. Mrs. Mitchell, welcome to Shoreline Towers. I'm Howard Benton, the building manager. He shook Carol's hand warmly. We are delighted to have you join our community. Thank you, Carol said, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the grand space after her modest Rochester home. Please, call me Carol. Carol it is. Your unit is on the 8th floor, one of our finest views. The movers set everything up yesterday, and I took the liberty of having the kitchen stocked with some basics. I figured you wouldn't want to go shopping your first night. Touched by the thoughtfulness, Carol followed Howard and Diane to the elevator, listening as they explained the building's amenities: pool, fitness center, community room, 24-hour security. The elevator doors opened directly into a small private foyer leading to her unit. Here we are, Howard said, handing her a key card. 8C. Would you like to do the honors? Carol's hand trembled slightly as she swiped the card. The lock clicked, and she pushed the door open, stepping into her new home for the first time. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a space that somehow managed to be both exactly as she remembered from the virtual tour and completely different now that it contained her furniture. Her familiar blue sofa and reading chair looked unexpectedly right against the backdrop of endless sky and water visible through the windows. Robert's bookshelf stood against one wall, already filled with their collection. On the mantel of the decorative fireplace sat family photos, carefully arranged by the movers according to her instructions. But it was the view that stole her breath. The living room opened onto a spacious balcony overlooking Tampa Bay, the waters shimmering under the afternoon sun, the distant shoreline of Tampa visible on the horizon. Below, Beach Drive bustled with activity, people strolling, dining at outdoor cafes, walking dogs along the waterfront park. What do you think? Diane asked softly, watching Carol's face. It's perfect, Carol whispered, moving to the window. She placed her palm against the glass, as if reaching for the water beyond. Absolutely perfect. After Diane departed with promises to check in tomorrow, and Howard left a welcome packet with important information, Carol found herself alone in her new home. The silence felt different here, not the heavy quiet of her empty Rochester house, but a lighter, expectant stillness, punctuated by the distant sounds of the city below and the occasional call of an unfamiliar bird. She moved slowly through the space, reacquainting herself with her possessions in their new context. In the kitchen, she found the groceries Howard had mentioned: milk, bread, eggs, fruit, coffee, and a bottle of champagne with a note. "Welcome to your new beginning." The bedroom featured the same stunning view as the living room, her familiar quilt now draped across a bed positioned to face the water. On the nightstand, Robert's reading glasses still sat beside their wedding photo. Carol touched the frame gently. "Well, what do you think?" she asked the photo. "Not bad for an impulsive decision, huh?" She unpacked her suitcase methodically, hanging clothes in the walk-in closet that was nearly twice the size of her old one. In the bathroom, she arranged her toiletries, marveling at the luxurious shower and soaking tub, indulgences she'd never had in Rochester. Finally, she returned to the living room and slid open the glass door to the balcony. The November air was warm, carrying the scent of salt and something floral. Below, palm trees swayed gently in the breeze. Carol placed Michael's turtle carving on the small table next to a chair, positioning it to face the water. Her phone buzzed, Jennifer checking in. "Landed safely. The condo is beautiful. We'll call tomorrow with details. Love you." As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the bay, Carol poured herself a glass of the welcome champagne and returned to the balcony. She raised her glass to the horizon. "To acting my age," she said softly, taking a sip as the sky bloomed in shades of pink and orange. That night, she slept better than she had in years, lulled by the distant sound of water against the seawall. The next morning, Carol woke naturally at 6, her teacher's body clock still functioning despite retirement. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't place the soft grey light filtering through unfamiliar curtains. Then she remembered Florida, her condo, her new life. She padded to the kitchen in her robe, grateful to find coffee among Howard's grocery selections. Cup in hand, she stepped onto the balcony just as the sun began to rise over Tampa Bay, painting the water in shades of gold and rose. A dolphin broke the surface, its sleek form visible for just a moment before disappearing beneath the waves. "Good morning to you too," Carol said, smiling at the empty space where the dolphin had been. After breakfast, she decided to explore her new neighborhood. Dressed in the lightest clothes she'd packed, a cotton blouse and linen pants that had rarely seen use in Rochester's brief summers, she ventured out onto Beach Drive. The street was already alive with joggers, dog walkers, and people seated at outdoor cafes, enjoying breakfast. Carol walked slowly, taking in the details: the brick-paved sidewalks, the flowering trees in decorative planters, the mix of high-end boutiques and art galleries that lined the street, a far cry from the familiar strip malls and chain stores of home. She followed the sidewalk to the waterfront park that stretched along the bay. A paved path wound through palm trees and green spaces, benches positioned at intervals to take advantage of the view. People of all ages walked, jogged, or cycled along the trail. Carol found an empty bench and sat, watching pelicans dive for fish in the shallow waters. "First time in St. Pete?" asked a voice beside her. Carol turned to find an older gentleman with deeply tanned skin and a shock of white hair had taken a seat at the other end of her bench. He wore shorts, a polo shirt, and a friendly smile. "Is it that obvious?" she asked. He chuckled. "You've got that 'I can't believe this is real' look. I see it a lot. Plus, you're wearing brand new walking shoes and looking at the pelicans like they're exotic birds at the zoo." Carol laughed, glancing down at her pristine sneakers. "Guilty as charged. I just moved here yesterday, actually, from Rochester, New York." "Ah, another snowbird fleeing the nest," he said with a nod. "I'm Frank Delaney, 20-year transplant from Chicago." "Carol Mitchell," she replied, shaking his offered hand. "And I'm not a snowbird. I sold my house. This is a permanent move." "Even better," Frank said. "We need more year-rounders to keep the lights on during hurricane season when all the part-timers flee back north." "Hurricane season," Carol repeated, a flutter of anxiety in her chest. "That's not something I had to worry about in Rochester." "Trade-off for no snow shoveling," Frank shrugged. "Don't worry, the buildings here are built for it, and you get plenty of warning." "Where are you staying?" "I bought a condo at Shoreline Towers, just up the street." Frank's eyebrows rose. "Nice choice. My sister lives there. Nancy Delaney, 4B. Tell her you met her baby brother. She'll get a kick out of it. I will, Carol promised, warmed by this first connection to her new community. So what brings a Rochester lady to St. Pete? Frank asked. Besides escaping winter, of course. Carol considered the question, watching a yacht cruise slowly across the bay. My husband passed away 3 years ago. My daughter thought I should act my age and settle into a quiet retirement. This is my version of acting my age. Frank's laugh was unexpected and genuine. I like your style, Carol Mitchell. My kids had similar ideas after their mother died, wanted me to move into one of those active adult communities in the suburbs. I told them the only activity I was interested in was watching the sunset from my balcony with a good scotch. Exactly, Carol said, feeling an immediate kinship with this stranger who understood her thinking so perfectly. They chatted for nearly an hour, Frank pointing out landmarks visible from their bench and offering insider tips about the best restaurants, the least crowded beaches, the art walks and farmers markets that made St. Petersburg special. By the time they parted ways, Carol had a list of recommendations and an invitation to join Frank and some friends for their weekly happy hour at a nearby restaurant the following evening. As she continued her walk, Carol felt a strange lightness in her step. Less than 24 hours in her new city, and she'd already made a connection. Not to replace those she'd left behind, but to begin weaving the fabric of her new life. Back at the condo, she spent the afternoon organizing and arranging, making the space truly hers. She positioned her favorite reading chair to face the water, hung art on the walls, and filled the kitchen cabinets with the items she'd shipped ahead. That evening, she called Jennifer via video chat, carrying her phone from room to room to give a virtual tour. "It's gorgeous, Mom," Jennifer admitted, her initial skepticism seemingly forgotten. "The view alone is worth it." "Wait until you see it in person," Carol said, turning the camera to capture the sunset, beginning to color the sky. "The guest room is all ready for you and the kids at Christmas." "About that," Jennifer began, a hint of apology in her voice. "Dave's parents were pretty upset about you moving. They're worried they won't see as much of the kids if we start splitting holidays between Rochester and Florida." Carol felt a pang of disappointment, but kept her voice light. "I understand. Maybe after the holidays then. Spring break, the kids would love the beach." "Definitely spring break," Jennifer promised. "And Mom, I'm really happy for you. The place is perfect." After they hung up, Carol returned to the balcony with a glass of wine, watching as the lights of St. Petersburg began to twinkle on in the gathering dusk. She felt a curious mix of emotions, a lingering sadness at the distance from her family, excitement about the possibilities ahead, and a surprising sense of pride in herself for having taken this leap. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. Opening it, she found a woman about her age with silver-streaked dark hair and a warm smile, holding a small potted plant. "Welcome to Shoreline Towers," the woman said. "I'm Nancy Delaney from 4B. My nosy brother Frank told me we had a new neighbor from Rochester, and I thought you might like some company on your first full day." Carol's face broke into a genuine smile as she stepped back to welcome her visitor. "Nancy, Frank mentioned you this morning. Please come in. I'd love the company." As she led Nancy to the balcony and poured her a glass of wine, Carol thought about Jennifer's words about acting her age. Maybe this, making new connections, embracing change, pursuing joy, was exactly what acting her age should mean. The two women sat talking as darkness fell completely and the lights of the city reflected on the bay waters below. The beginnings of friendship taking root with each shared story and laugh. And for the first time since Robert's death, Carol felt not just that she was existing, but that she was truly living. 2 months had passed since Carol's arrival in St. Petersburg, and winter, such as it was in Florida, had settled in with temperatures that reminded her more of Rochester's May than January. Christmas had come and gone, quieter than she'd hoped. Jennifer and her family had stayed in Rochester after all, celebrating with video calls that left Carol with a bittersweet ache despite her brave smile. But her brother Michael had surprised her with a 4-day visit, bringing sunshine to her holidays with his easy laughter and genuine delight in her new home. Now, on a mild January morning, Carol stood in her kitchen preparing coffee, moving with the comfortable familiarity of routine. She knew exactly how many steps it took to reach the refrigerator, which cabinet housed her favorite mug, and how to position herself to enjoy the morning light that streamed through the eastern windows. The condo had become home, its spaces molded to her habits like a well-worn glove. The coffee maker gurgled its final notes as Carol glanced at the clock. 6:45 a.m. Perfect timing. She poured the steaming liquid into her mug, a colorful ceramic piece she'd purchased from a local artist at the Saturday morning market, and headed for the balcony where she'd watch the sun rise fully over Tampa Bay, as had become her daily ritual. The door to the balcony slid open with a soft whisper, and the morning air embraced her, clean, salt-tinged, and carrying just enough chill to make the hot coffee in her hands feel welcome. She settled into her chair, positioning Michael's turtle carving on the table beside her, as she did every morning. A small superstition she'd developed, a token of good luck. "Morning, Robert," she said quietly to the empty chair beside her, another part of her ritual. Not out of grief or longing now, but a comfortable acknowledgement of the life she'd lived before and the person who would have enjoyed this view as much as she did. Below, the waterfront park was already dotted with early risers, joggers in bright athletic wear, dog walkers following their pets' meandering paths, a yoga class assembling on the green space with mats unfurled like colorful islands. Carol had come to recognize the regulars, the elderly man with the dignified greyhound who walked precisely at 7:05 each morning, the young woman who ran backward along the path, training for something, Carol assumed, though she couldn't imagine what, and the retired couple who power-walked in perfect synchronization, their arms pumping like pistons. "Beautiful morning," came a voice from the neighboring balcony, where Nancy Delaney leaned against the railing, coffee mug in hand. In the weeks since their first meeting, the two women had fallen into the habit of these shared morning moments, their balconies close enough for conversation without requiring the effort of a formal visit. "Perfect," Carol agreed. "Any plans today?" Nancy sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "Pickleball at 10, then lunch with the book club. We're discussing that mystery set in the Everglades. You should join us next month." "I might," Carol said, though they both knew she probably wouldn't. Not yet. She'd been selective about which social invitations to accept, careful not to fill her calendar too quickly. The weekly happy hours with Frank and his friends had become a fixture, and she'd joined a walking group that met 3 mornings a week to stroll the waterfront. But she was still finding her balance, learning the rhythm of her new life. "Don't forget, committee meeting at 4, Nancy reminded her. "Howard's going to present the pool renovation options." Carol nodded. She'd surprised herself by volunteering for the building's amenities committee just a month after moving in. It felt good to have a purpose, to contribute to her new community. And if she occasionally drew on her experience organizing school fundraisers and PTA events during her teaching years, well, some skills never really left you. "I'll be there," she promised, with bells on. As Nancy retreated inside to prepare for her day, Carol remained on the balcony, watching a dolphin arch through the water near the seawall. She'd learned to spot their distinctive fins, to anticipate where they might surface next. Another small joy of her new life. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Morning, Mom. Kids wanted to show you their science fair projects. FaceTime around 4:30 your time?" Carol typed back quickly. "Perfect. Can't wait to see." She added a heart emoji, something she'd never used before moving to Florida. Somehow, the distance made these small expressions of affection feel more necessary, less awkward. The relationship with her daughter had evolved in unexpected ways since her move. After the initial tension, Jennifer had settled into a pattern of frequent calls and texts, as if the physical distance had created space for a different kind of closeness. They spoke more openly now, about real things, Jennifer's struggles at work, Carol's adventures in her new city, rather than just exchanging updates about weather and health. Finishing her coffee, Carol headed inside to dress for her morning walk. The building's elevator carried her to the lobby, where Howard waved from behind his desk. "Morning, Carol. Don't forget the committee meeting later. Wouldn't miss it," she assured him, pushing through the glass doors into the warming day. The waterfront path welcomed her like an old friend, its brick surface now familiar beneath her no longer new walking shoes. She set off at a brisk pace, nodding to the familiar faces she passed. 3 months ago, she'd been bundled in layers, scraping ice from her windshield. Now she wore light cotton pants and a short-sleeved blouse, her skin developing the faint golden tan of someone who lived in perpetual summer. "Carol, wait up!" She turned to see Marianne and Elaine from her walking group hurrying to catch up, their silver hair gleaming in the morning light. Both were transplants like her, Marianne from Pennsylvania, Elaine from Michigan, and they'd bonded over shared experiences of northern winters and southern adjustments. "We thought you weren't coming," Marianne said as they fell into step beside her. "Just running a bit late," Carol replied. "I got caught up watching the dolphins." "Still a tourist," Elaine teased, but her tone was affectionate. "Wait until you've been here a year. You'll barely notice them." "I hope that never happens," Carol said seriously. "The day I stop noticing dolphins is the day I need to move somewhere else." The women walked their usual route, a 3-mile loop that took them past the Dali Museum, through the bustling downtown, and back along the waterfront. They chatted easily about books they'd read, restaurants they'd tried, the latest gossip from the building where Marianne lived. Normal, everyday friendship, something Carol had worried might be hard to find at her age in a new city. "Are you coming to Frank's birthday dinner tomorrow?" Elaine asked as they neared the end of their walk. "It's at that new seafood place on Central Avenue." "I wouldn't miss it," Carol said. "I found the perfect card. Has a grumpy old man on the front saying, 'In my day, we didn't have birthdays, we just got older.'" Both women laughed. "That's Frank to a T," Marianne agreed. They parted ways at the entrance to Shoreline Towers, making plans to meet again on Friday. Carol headed upstairs, pleasantly tired from the exercise and the conversation. Her phone buzzed again as she unlocked her door. A reminder about the watercolor class she'd signed up for that afternoon at the community center. Another new venture, tentative steps toward discovering who Carol Mitchell might be in this chapter of her life. After a light lunch and a shower, Carol gathered her art supplies, all new, purchased from a local art store where the young clerk had spent an hour helping her select the right brushes and papers. She was halfway to the door when her phone rang. Jennifer. "Hi, honey," Carol answered, balancing her art bag on her hip. "Everything okay? I thought we were talking later." Jennifer's voice was tight with tension. "Mom, it's Lucas. He fell at school and broke his arm. We're at the hospital now." Carol's heart clenched. "Oh, Jen, is he all right?" "They say it's a clean break, no surgery needed, but he's pretty shaken up. He's been asking for you." "For me?" Carol repeated, surprised. "Put him on if you can." There was a rustling sound, then her grandson's small voice came through the phone. "Grandma?" "Hey, buddy," Carol said, keeping her tone light despite the worry tightening her chest. "I hear you had quite an adventure today." "I fell off the monkey bars," Lucas said, his voice wavering between pride and fear. "The doctor says my bone is in 2 pieces." "That sounds painful," Carol sympathized. "But bones are amazing things. They know exactly how to grow back together, stronger than before." "Really?" The interest in his voice was palpable. "Really? When I was just a little older than you, I broke my arm roller skating, and now it's my strongest arm." "Which one?" Lucas demanded. "My right one, the same as yours, if I remember correctly." "Yeah!" The excitement in his voice made Carol smile. "Mom says I have to get a cast. Can I get a blue one?" "Blue would be excellent," Carol agreed. "And you know what? I think this calls for a special present from Florida, something a brave monkey bar adventurer would appreciate." "Like what?" Lucas asked, distracted now from his pain by the prospect of a gift. "That's a surprise. But I'll send it right away. Jennifer came back on the line. "Thanks, Mom. That really helped. He's been so scared." "How are you holding up?" Carol asked, hearing the strain in her daughter's voice. "Fine. Tired. Dave's stuck at work, and Emma's at a friend's house, and the hospital paperwork is endless." Jennifer trailed off with a sigh. Carol made a split-second decision. "Jen, what if I came up for a few days? To help out?" The silence on the other end lasted just a beat too long. "You'd do that?" "Of course I would. He's my grandson, and you need an extra pair of hands. I can book a flight for tomorrow morning." "But your new life, your classes, your friends," Carol laughed softly. "They'll all be here when I get back. That's the beauty of having roots in two places, honey. I can go where I'm needed." After they hung up, Carol called the community center to cancel her watercolor class, then booked a flight to Rochester for the following morning. She spent the rest of the afternoon packing and searching local shops for the perfect gift for Lucas, eventually settling on a fossilized shark tooth pendant from a beachside gift shop, accompanied by a book about marine life. That evening, she attended the building committee meeting as promised, where she found herself unexpectedly vocal about the pool renovation options. Her suggestion to include a shallow wading area for visiting grandchildren was met with enthusiastic approval from other residents who hosted family visits. "Looks like we've found our resident advocate for the younger generation," Howard commented with a smile. Walking back to her unit afterward, Carol realized something had shifted in her. The Carol who had arrived in St. Petersburg 3 months ago had been seeking escape, a new beginning separate from her identity as mother, grandmother, widow. She had needed that space, that time to rediscover herself. But standing on her balcony that evening, watching the lights of St. Petersburg twinkle against the night sky, she understood that her new life didn't require abandoning her old one. She could be both the Carol who watched dolphins from her oceanfront balcony and the grandmother who flew to Rochester when a little boy with a broken arm needed her. She packed methodically, selecting clothes appropriate for the winter she was temporarily returning to. As she folded sweaters she hadn't worn in months, Carol smiled at the thought of snow, of her daughter's house, of her grandchildren's faces when they saw her, not with longing or regret, but with the simple joy of someone going to visit a place she had once called home, secure in the knowledge that another home awaited her return. Before bed, she stepped onto the balcony one last time, breathing in the salt air and listening to the gentle lapping of waves against the seawall below. "I'll be back," she whispered to the night, to the sea, to the life she'd built here. Not a goodbye, but a promise. The Rochester cold hit Carol like a physical blow as she exited the airport terminal. 3 months in Florida's perpetual warmth had thinned her northern blood, making the February chill feel sharper than she remembered. She tightened her scarf, hastily purchased at the Tampa airport when she realized she no longer owned proper winter accessories, and scanned the pickup area for Jennifer's SUV. A horn honked, and Carol spotted her daughter waving from behind the wheel, Emma's face pressed against the passenger window, breath fogging the glass. Carol wheeled her small suitcase toward them, her steps quickening despite the slippery pavement. "Grandma!" Emma burst from the car, launching herself into Carol's arms with the unrestrained enthusiasm of an 8-year-old. "You came back!" "Of course I did," Carol said, hugging her granddaughter tightly. "I heard someone needed the official grandma treatment." Jennifer emerged more slowly, her face a mixture of relief and lingering worry. "Thanks for coming, Mom," she said, embracing Carol over Emma's head. "It's been a rough couple of days." "That's what grandmas are for," Carol replied, squeezing her daughter's shoulder. "How's our patient?" "Milking it for all it's worth," Jennifer said with a tired smile. "Dave's home with him now. Lucas has decided that his broken arm means he needs to be hand-fed ice cream." Carol laughed, loading her suitcase into the trunk. "Smart boy. I brought bribes, by the way, for both kids." "You didn't have to do that," Jennifer protested, though her tone lacked conviction. "Grandma privileges," Carol said firmly, climbing into the passenger seat. "Non-negotiable." As they drove through familiar Rochester streets, Carol was struck by the strange dual sensation of homecoming and visiting. The landmarks were all the same. The library where she'd taken Jennifer for story hour, the park where she and Robert had walked every Sunday, the grocery store where she'd shopped for 40 years. Yet they felt both intimately familiar and oddly distant, as if she was seeing them through a lens that had been slightly refocused. "The house sold," Jennifer mentioned as they passed Carol's old neighborhood. "Young couple with twins. Dad from the school district says they've already painted the front door yellow." "Good for them," Carol said, meaning it. "That house deserves a family with children." "You're not curious? We could drive by?" Carol shook her head. "No need. That chapter's closed." She turned to look at her daughter. "But I wouldn't mind driving past the lake later if we have time. I've missed seeing it." Jennifer nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Deal." At Jennifer's home, a sprawling colonial in a newer suburb, Dave met them at the door, finger pressed to his lips. "The patient finally fell asleep," he whispered, giving Carol a one-armed hug. "He's been asking when Grandma was landing every 15 minutes since he woke up." "The power of Grandma," Jennifer said, helping Carol with her coat. "She's like a celebrity, more like a pushover," Dave corrected with a grin. "Lucas already told me Grandma never makes him eat vegetables when she visits." "Pure slander," Carol protested, though the twinkle in her eye suggested otherwise. "I simply believe in a balanced approach to nutrition that occasionally prioritizes cookies." Inside, the house was warm and cluttered in the comfortable way of a home with active children. Backpacks and shoes by the door, half-finished art projects on the dining table, a stack of mail waiting to be sorted. Carol felt a wave of affection for the organized chaos, so different from her pristine condo with its carefully curated spaces. "I put you in the guest room," Jennifer said, leading the way upstairs. "I changed the sheets and everything." "Very impressive," Carol teased. "Next you'll tell me you dusted." "Oh, let's not get carried away," Jennifer laughed, pushing open the door to reveal a pleasant room with a bay window overlooking the backyard. "But I did put flowers on the nightstand." The small vase of grocery store daisies touched Carol more than an elaborate bouquet would have. "It's perfect, honey. Thank you. Get settled, and I'll make some coffee. Lucas will probably sleep another hour. The pain medication knocks him out." Left alone, Carol unpacked her small suitcase, arranging toiletries in the guest bathroom and hanging her Florida-weight clothes in the closet. From a carefully padded box, she removed Lucas's gifts, the shark tooth pendant and marine life book, along with a delicate seashell necklace for Emma and a bottle of local St. Petersburg honey for Jennifer and Dave, small ambassadors from her new life to her old one. Downstairs, she found Jennifer in the kitchen, measuring coffee grounds with the precision of someone desperately in need of caffeine. Carol leaned against the counter, watching her daughter's familiar movements. "You look good, Mom," Jennifer said, glancing up. "Florida agrees with you." "It does," Carol agreed, "but it's good to be back too. I've missed you all." Jennifer started the coffee maker, then turned to face her mother fully. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For giving you such a hard time about moving. For saying you weren't acting your age." Jennifer's cheeks flushed slightly. "I was wrong." Carol shook her head. "You were worried. That's what daughters do." "No, it was more than that," Jennifer insisted. "I was selfish. I wanted you to stay because it was convenient for me, for the kids. I didn't stop to consider what you needed." The coffee maker gurgled between them, filling the kitchen with its rich aroma. Carol chose her words carefully. "When your father died, I lost more than just my husband. I lost my sense of purpose, my companion, my future as I'd imagined it. For a while, I was just going through the motions." She met her daughter's eyes. "Florida wasn't about running away. It was about finding out who I could be without all the roles that had defined me for so long. And have you? Found out, I mean?" Carol smiled. "I'm working on it. But yes, I think I'm getting there." They carried their coffee to the living room, settling onto the comfortable couch where so many family movie nights and Christmas mornings had taken place. Jennifer tucked her feet beneath her, a gesture so familiar it made Carol's heart ache slightly with affection. "Tell me about your life there." Jennifer said. "The real version, not the highlight reel you share on our calls." For the next hour, Carol painted a picture of her St. Petersburg existence. The morning dolphin-watching, the walking group friends, the committee meetings and art classes. She told Jennifer about Frank's irreverent humor and Nancy's thoughtful advice, about the bookstore owner who set aside new releases he thought she'd enjoy, about the chef at her favorite cafe who had started preparing her usual without being asked. "It sounds like you've built a real community," Jennifer observed, refilling their coffee cups. "I have," Carol agreed. "But it doesn't replace this one, just complements it." A thump from upstairs interrupted their conversation, followed by the distinctive sound of a 6-year-old trying to navigate stairs with one arm in a cast. Jennifer started to rise, but Carol placed a hand on her arm. "Let me," she said. "Grandma to the rescue." She found Lucas halfway down the stairs. His blue cast clutched protectively against his chest, hair tousled from sleep. "Well, hello there, monkey bar champion," Carol said, extending her hand to help him navigate the remaining steps. "I hear you've been having quite the adventure." Lucas's face lit up. "Grandma, you came from Florida." "I sure did. Hopped on a plane as soon as I heard about your arm." She knelt to his level once they reached the bottom of the stairs. "How are you feeling?" "It hurts sometimes," he admitted, his lower lip jutting out slightly. "But I'm being brave. The bravest," Carol agreed solemnly. "Which reminds me, I brought something for especially brave boys who have adventures on monkey bars." His eyes widened. "A present? Maybe even 2, Carol whispered conspiratorially. "But first, how about some lunch? Grandma's specialty grilled cheese." "With the crusts cut off?" Lucas asked hopefully. "Is there any other way?" The afternoon passed in a blur of simple pleasures. Grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles, presents unwrapped with exclamations of delight. Lucas's detailed explanation of exactly how he'd fallen. "I was hanging upside down with no hands, Grandma." And Emma's enthusiastic demonstration of her newly learned piano piece. Carol moved through it all with a lightness she hadn't felt in Rochester for years, present in a way she hadn't been during her last months in the city. That evening, after the children were in bed, Carol, Jennifer and Dave sat around the kitchen table with glasses of wine, talking in the easy way of family, comfortable with both conversation and silence. "How long can you stay?" Dave asked, refilling Carol's glass. "My return flight is in 5 days, Carol replied. "Is that enough time for you to teach me all your broken arm care techniques?" Jennifer smiled gratefully. "More than enough. The doctor says he'll be back to normal activities in about 6 weeks with some physical therapy." "Just in time for their spring break visit," Dave added. "If that's still okay with you, Carol." "More than okay," Carol assured him. "I've already started planning. The building has a children's pool area they're installing next month, and there's a marine science center nearby with touch tanks. Lucas can show off his healed arm to all the retired folks in my building who'll certainly spoil him rotten." Later, after Dave had gone up to bed, Carol and Jennifer remained at the table, their conversation drifting to deeper waters. "Do you ever regret it?" Jennifer asked quietly. "Moving away?" Carol considered the question, giving it the honesty it deserved. "I miss you all every day. That's the hardest part. But regret? No." She traced the rim of her wineglass thoughtfully. "What I've found there, the independence, the fresh perspective, the joy of discovery, I needed that. Still need it." "And Dad, do you think he would have understood?" Carol smiled, thinking of Robert's practical nature, his cautious approach to change. "Eventually. He might have taken longer to come around than you did, but he always wanted me to be happy." She reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Just like you do. I just worry sometimes," Jennifer admitted, "about you being alone there." "I'm not alone," Carol said gently. "I'm on my own. There's a difference." The next few days fell into a comfortable rhythm. Carol took over much of the household management, preparing meals, helping Lucas with tasks made difficult by his cast, driving Emma to her after-school activities. She accompanied Jennifer to Lucas's follow-up appointment, took both children to the Rochester Museum, while Jennifer and Dave had a much-needed date night, and even helped Dave install the new dishwasher that had been sitting in the garage for 3 months. On her final full day in Rochester, Jennifer took the afternoon off work, and they drove to Lake Ontario. The February day was clear and cold, the lake a sheet of steely blue, stretching to the horizon. They parked at a scenic overlook and sat in the car with the heater running, watching seagulls wheel against the winter sky. "This is what I miss," Carol said, gesturing toward the vast expanse of water. "Not the cold, definitely not the snow, but this, the lake, the particular quality of light here." "You could always come back," Jennifer said, though her tone lacked the insistence it might have held 3 months ago. Carol shook her head. "I'm where I need to be right now. But I'll always come back to visit, and you'll always have a place with me in St. Petersburg." Jennifer nodded, understanding in her eyes. "You know, when I told you to act your age, this isn't what I meant at all." "I know," Carol laughed. "You meant sensible shoes and book clubs and staying put, and instead you're taking watercolor classes and making friends with dolphin watchers and serving on building committees. Scandalous behavior for a woman in her 60s. Carol agreed with mock seriousness. "The thing is," Jennifer said, turning in her seat to face her mother fully, "you're happier than I've seen you since before Dad got sick. You're more yourself somehow." Carol felt a lump form in her throat. "That might be the nicest thing you could have said to me. It's true, and it's made me think about my own life, about the choices Dave and I make." Jennifer gazed out at the lake. "We're so caught up in routines and responsibilities. Sometimes I wonder if we're missing something essential." "There's no single right way to live a life," Carol said gently. "What works for me might not work for you. The important thing is to make choices consciously, not just drift along the expected path." They sat in companionable silence for a while longer, watching the lake and the sky, each lost in her own thoughts about paths taken and not taken, about the complex relationship between mothers and daughters, about the courage it takes to change and the courage it takes to stay. The next morning at the airport, Lucas clung to Carol's legs, his cast decorated now with drawings and signatures from family and friends. "Do you have to go back to Florida, Grandma?" Carol knelt to his level. "I do, buddy. But guess what? In just a few weeks, you and Emma and Mom and Dad are coming to visit me, and I have a balcony where we can watch dolphins every morning." "Real dolphins?" His eyes widened in wonder. "Real dolphins," she confirmed. "I promise." Emma's goodbye was more composed but no less heartfelt. "I'm going to practice my piano extra hard so I can play the new piece for you when we visit," she said, hugging Carol tightly. "I can't wait to hear it," Carol told her, kissing the top of her head. Dave embraced her next. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." Finally, it was Jennifer's turn. Mother and daughter held each other for a long moment. "Call when you land," Jennifer said, echoing the instruction Carol had given her countless times throughout her childhood. "I will," Carol promised. "Love you, honey." As she walked toward the security checkpoint, Carol felt the familiar pull of 2 lives, 2 homes, 2 versions of herself. But unlike 3 months ago, when she'd left Rochester with a sense of both escape and anxiety, this departure felt different, a returning rather than a leaving, a continuation rather than an ending. On the plane, watching Rochester grow small beneath her, Carol thought about the circular nature of life's journeys, how sometimes you had to leave a place to truly appreciate it, how sometimes acting your age meant defying expectations rather than meeting them. By the time the plane began its descent into Tampa, the familiar anticipation had returned, the eagerness to see her balcony, to check if the dolphins would greet her in the morning, to tell Nancy and Frank about her adventures in the frozen north. Not because Rochester had failed her, or because St. Petersburg was perfect, but because she had created space in her heart for both, had found a way to be fully herself in each place. As the Florida sunshine welcomed her home, Carol Mitchell smiled, thinking of her daughter's words, "You're more yourself, somehow." That, she decided, was the best definition of acting her age she'd ever heard. 1 year to the day, since Carol had moved to Petersburg. She woke before dawn and quietly prepared her coffee. The ritual was so familiar now, the precise amount of grounds, the specific mug, her favorite, painted with dolphins by Emma during their spring break visit. The patient wait for the machine to finish its gurgling symphony. The sky was just beginning to lighten as she stepped onto her balcony, Michael's turtle carving in its place of honor on the small table. In the past year, the balcony had evolved. Potted hibiscus and bougainvillea now framed the space. A small fountain bubbled in the corner, a Christmas gift from Jennifer and Dave, and a child-sized chair sat beside her own, for Lucas, who had declared during his visit that he needed his own dolphin-watching spot. Carol settled into her chair, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. Below, the waterfront was still quiet, though a few early joggers had begun to appear on the path. She knew most of them by sight now, if not by name. The community she'd built one morning, one smile, one conversation at a time. "Morning," came Nancy's voice from the neighboring balcony. "Happy anniversary." Carol raised her mug in acknowledgement. "Has it really been a year?" "Time flies when you're acting your age," Nancy replied with a grin, referencing the phrase that had become something of a joke between them. The eastern sky blushed pink, then gold, as the sun prepared to make its appearance. Carol watched the light change, thinking about the year behind her and the years ahead. She'd found her rhythm here, balancing committee meetings and art classes, weekly dinners with friends and monthly video calls with her book club back in Rochester, quiet mornings alone, and lively weekends when the grandchildren visited. She discovered that she loved kayaking, had a talent for watercolors, and could still learn new dance steps at the community center's salsa nights. Her phone chimed with a text. "Jennifer, happy Floridaversary, Mom. So proud of you. Love you." Carol smiled, typing back, "Love you too." Coffee on the balcony, thinking of you. As the sun finally crested the horizon, painting the water in shades of amber and rose, Carol took a sip of her coffee and felt a profound sense of contentment settle over her. Not the restless happiness of youth or the comfortable satisfaction of middle age, but something deeper, the hard-earned peace of a woman who had faced loss, embraced change, and found herself anew. A familiar dorsal fin broke the water's surface, the dolphin she'd come to think of as her morning companion. "Hello, old friend," she whispered. In that perfect moment, with the sun warming her face and a new day spreading before her, Carol Mitchell knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly what acting her age should be. Not a diminishment but an expansion, not an ending but a continuation, not a fading but a brightening. She raised her coffee mug in a silent toast to the rising sun, to the dolphin, to Robert's memory, to Jennifer's growing understanding, to her own courage, and most of all, to the beautiful, unpredictable journey of becoming more fully herself with each passing day. Some dreams, she had discovered, weren't meant to be chased, they were meant to be lived.